Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin'. Today we're talking about tube fishing. From flipping tubes to finesse tubes, everything you need to know. There's no denying that after the last 5 or so years, bass fishing has been getting tougher for a lot of people. Finesse fishing in a lot of situations is taking over, and yet the tube, one of the best finesse baits of all time, continues to be forgotten. And that is a huge advantage for you if you take the time to remember the tube. A tube offers us some things that a lot of other baits don't. As bass fishing has seen an increase in pressure, as fish have become more conditioned, it is getting more and more important to fish with lures that do a better job of imitating life. What I mean is we're looking for lures that have secondary actions, not just a primary action. We're looking for lures that have the ability to trigger a feed response in a fish, not just rely on a fish's desire to feed. And a tube is one of the few finesse baits that checks that box. See, a tube can be fished many different ways. It can be rigged different ways, fished different ways. You can get it to behave in different ways as well, depending on the heads and how you fish it. So we are able to take a tube and use it in the same place as a Ned rig, the same place as a jig, the same place as a creature bait. We can do all of these traditional things with it, but then we can also take that same tube and we can step it up. We can use its ability to trigger by darting, fleeing, spiraling, creating these secondary motions that many of those other baits struggle with. That is what sets a tube apart, and I think that is what everyone overlooks, because you see a tube on a store shelf. There's a pack of tubes. Okay, it looks like nothing. Frankly, you pull them out of a package, they kind of look like nothing. It's not that impressive. You set them next to some Ned rigs with some unique shapes, small craws, small creatures. This is not the one that stands out from the crowd. But then you see that behavior in the water, or you see it in the hands of someone who really understands tube fishing, and the light bulb moment goes off. So today I want to talk to you about a handful of different bait styles. See, I separate tubes into basically 4 categories, and we can do everything from Great Lakes smallmouth to Florida heavy cover flipping with a tube, if you understand how to separate the baits and what each one is for. So the tube itself is a very unique bait. It is a hollow bait. If you're not familiar, completely hollow on the inside, and you take a jig head and you put it inside, pop it out, and then the end of the tube has all the legs that have been split apart, but the main body is just a hollow tube, thus the name. It does a pretty good job of imitating a crawfish on the bottom, or a small minnow, a bluegill, but we can also pop it and work it and do other things with it to imitate all sorts of things. Fishing a tube should be everybody's backup plan. It should be. I don't care where you are in the country. Now, if you are in the Great Lakes region, the northern areas, it should be a whole lot more than your backup plan. If you're down south and you're flipping and you want to be different than other people, it should be a whole lot more than a backup plan. But if you're in that core of the country, that 70 or 80% of anglers in the middle, this doesn't need to be what you do all day, every day. But if it's not in the boat, ready to go on your tough days, you're making your tough days harder on yourself. Because this is one of those baits that can come in and save the day. Through all the years where I was guiding on Clear Lake in California, many of you know that I did that for a very long time. We live in Tennessee now, and I don't get back out there as much as I would like. But through all those years, the tube was always my panic button bait. That was the bait that I turned to catch them on the rough days. the days where we could get bit on nothing else. A tournament style tube, a thin bodied 3.5-inch tube in a green pumpkin black flake. That was my Clear Lake special to save a difficult day every time. Now, the tube is more than that to me. The tube actually is one of, in the summertime, one of my all-time favorite patterns in clear water because I can do so many unique things with it. I love stalking fish in clear open water, suspending fish, fish that are hanging out on the ends of deep docks, things like that, using a tube to isolate a fish. And I'm not talking with electronics. I've been doing this my whole life with my eyes. You see them suspended, and then we lead them with a tube using the death spiral technique. So a tube rigged a certain way will fall in a circle to bottom very slowly, and it's powerful. We're going to come back to that. But using that method, we can call suspended fish unlike any other bait in existence. It's amazing how well it works. All right, with that, let's jump into the styles of tubes. I'm going to take each style. We'll talk about how we use them, where that one is specialized. We're going to go from smallest to largest. So if you're the guy flipping in the south, you're going last, but we're going to get to that. We'll start with the really small tubes and work our way through. When I think of the little tiny tubes, these little guys, I'm thinking of the northern part of the country and or highland reservoirs. Okay, typically clearer water situations, the best of the best of the best for me here is when we go to the Great Lakes. Those goby eaters, they will massacre the tiny tubes. 3 different tubes in this category. Let's talk about the staple first. This, the net bait, the STH, that 2.5-inch tube. That thing in the juvenile goby has been a staple for us for years. Now, it went through a big color shift a couple of years ago. So the juvenile goby that you get today does not look like the juvenile goby from 2 or 3 years ago, but it still smashes them. We had an amazing day, an amazing video on that bait last summer, right in the middle of summer. And I think that's one of the things I want to emphasize is that we get into the middle of summer. This time of year, those fish have seen a lot of baits now, right? When you're that first guy up north after ice out, those fish are losing their minds. They're chewing. But you let some time go by, they get more and more and more leery. And you really want to dial in your baits. You really want to dial in your actions to catch those bigger fish. And the tube is hands down one of the best baits to do that. So that bait, that's a 2.5-inch tube, and it is proven. We have smashed them on it. Now, I've got another one here for you that's even smaller, because small is a major part of the game with those fish. Those leery fish on the big water, Great Lakes, clear water. Small is key by the time you get to this time of year. From X-Zone, in their Stealth Finesse series, which is a whole series of downsized profiles that were released last year. You know, a smaller creature bait, a smaller craw, smaller minnow, smaller tube. We have the 2.25 scented Stealth tube. Comes in all kinds of colors from your, you know, green pumpkin blue up to that Great Lakes sand. And this is the one. Check this thing out. If you're in that region and you were only going to throw one, there it is right there. 2.25 inches. It's a tiny tube in an incredible color. The downsized package is so key. Fish get leery of baits. They've seen a lot of baits. They're cautious. When you throw those smaller profiles, a lot of that caution goes away. Those red flags drop. The fish are willing to creep around because it's just in a different size class. Forget the look. It's in a different size class of what they're seeing every day. Then look comes into play and they look perfect. That color, Great Lakes sand, oh man, that's the one. Now heads, there are 3 different heads that we'll use in this category. I'll talk about 2 of them right now. 2 different ends of the spectrum. So X-Zone In that Stealth Finesse series, they also did a tube head. Check this thing out. If you're around big ones, this thing is amazing. So this is the head, because when you go down to a 2 1/4 inch tube, it's going to take a special head to be short enough to not have your hook way back here, right? Most tube heads, the tube is shorter than the tube head. So they made this compact tube head specifically for this. It's got these grooves cut in it to help hold scent too, because a lot of people will scent their tube heads before they put them in the tube just to help it get in there right. So this little guy in here, pop it through, is the perfect size for that downsized tube, but it still has a stout hook. So you can set this on 6-pound line, but you could set this on 12-pound line also. If you know you're around big ones, that is the way to go. Now, if your fish are crazy line shy or you're around smaller fish, the other thing that I do, I throw a lot of times when I'm throwing these tiny tubes is a 1/0 guppy head. Tiny little hook, light line. You could throw it down to 4-pound line if you need to. You can still stick that hook. But if you can upsize at all, this hook will stick them and they are not coming off. So that's that first tube. That is, I say first tube, and it's like in any given year, when I go north, I spend a ton of time tubing. That is the vast majority of my tube fishing now. Because when I'm up there, I throw the tiniest of tubes. I smash them on these little guys. Now this next one is also a little guy. This is from Great Lakes Finesse. Completely different than any other tube out here. This is called the 2.5 Juvie Craw, but I'm still putting it in here because it is a tube. Let me pull it out. It's a true craw profile. So unlike every other tube out here today, it doesn't have all these tails. It has claws and tentacles. That's what it's got, but it is still a hollow bodied tube. It's a very unique approach to a tube. True craw profile in that downsized presentation. Tim and I have both crushed with this thing over the last year or two. So they make, Great Lakes Finesse also makes a very small head that fits perfectly in their tube. Again, if you are going to throw these micro tubes, you've got to have an appropriate hook. So they built a perfect head for their tube. Check this out. Now I'm going to show you a trick on this that you don't see coming. Take this, put it in, pop her through. And I like to put it right between the eyeballs myself. That's where I like for it to rest. I kind of split them, just like this. That's how I'll fish that thing. So we've got a crawdad sitting on bottom and he's got his claws, right? See that profile? But there's a trick. So the way that I fish tubes, as you see, are exposed hook points. Better hookup ratio. When you're fishing that thing on the bottom and they grab it with an exposed hook, even if you don't realize what's happened, a lot of times that exposed hook will catch and you've got them. So that's how I do it the majority of the time, but I can go through a lot of tubes. Or if you're in a fishery that's got a lot of wood on the bottom, man, it can be so frustrating. Check out the other thing that you can do with this. You take it and you tuck the hook into the tube. It's goofy looking, right? Totally goofy looking. It works. This is a trick that I have seen work extremely, let me straighten it up there, just like that, extremely well. The skin of the tube is so thin that if you set the hook, you'll punch right through. It'll pop it out. But if you don't set the hook, if you're just bumping into wood and other cover, no hook point. It'll bounce right through that stuff all day long. So if you're on a finesse fishery that's got a lot of laydowns or big chunk rock in it, this can be a great option for you, a great way to hide that hook point, or you can expose it and fish it the way that I most often do. So those are the 3 tubes in that tiny tube category. And like I said, that represents a major part of my tube fishing, because I will oftentimes go to the Great Lakes just to do this, just to do that. Now, there's a couple of ways that I'll fish these. I'm going to give you 2 examples of what I like to do, because this is such a unique thing. I feel like if I see a big one with my eyeballs, mind you, much of the Great Lakes in early summer are very clear. When I see a fish, be it on the bottom, be it running from me underneath a dock in a marina, or suspended out in the open, there's a lot of that too, fish that are just floating, I have a very high rate of conversion. I understand how to catch those fish, and there are 2 different methods that I'll use. So one is that death spiral. You want to go to a light enough head. The lighter the head, the better. Drop down to the 1/8 ounce for these tiny tubes. Throw it, and when you throw it, you don't aim at the fish. If that water's crystal clear, you aim 15 to 40 feet away from the fish. They will see it. Trust me, they will see it. You lead those fish, and that bait will begin to spiral to the bottom. It just does this slow death spiral, and it calls them. It is a fish magnet. Those fish will spot it, and they just start coming. And you just let that thing go all the way down. Now, the second method is if those fish are on bottom, you don't have time for the death spiral. So I go to a heavier head, which will tighten it up, and it'll just boom on the bottom, okay? Those are sort of the 2 methods. But if they're up in the column, the lightest head possible, so they have time to track it and come to it. Now, once that tube hits the bottom, generally you can't see the fish anymore, right? They go out of sight, down into the depths. But you know, if they start tracking it, they don't stop. They go all the way to the bottom with it. So in my head, I'm visualizing my tube has landed on bottom. There it is. And that bass is looking. That's my visualization in my head. And what I do is I outweight them. Crystal clear water fish that have been fished for are cautious. If you bump that tube, hop it up, pop, pop, like we so often do, they're swimming away almost every time. So I outweight them. I just let it sit and sit and sit. And what I've observed with clear water smallmouth in particular is that they'll stare for a really long time. And even if they decide they're not going to eat it, so oftentimes you'll just be sitting there and all of a sudden it goes dunk, because they already saw the action on the way down. They've already made their mind up. Now they're waiting for it to do something wrong. And when it never moves, they're like, well, okay, all the fake ones move. Wham, they hit that thing. She'll just be sitting there and just dunk, you never do anything, and they bite it. But if I wait and that doesn't happen, what I've observed is that a lot of smallmouth, if they decide not to do it, they'll bail off, but they still watch. And I give it one tiny little shake. I just want to bounce it. I don't want to hop that thing. I don't want it flying off somewhere. Just a little hop. And then I wait again. And so often that's enough. Even if a fish has cruised away, they see that little shake and they just right back to it, and dong, they eat that thing. No joke. That is my favorite method to target fish with a tube. If I get to choose, I am going to go to a clear water fishery, and I'm going to make long leads on open water fish, call them to my baits, no electronics, everything's shut down. This is a visual game, and just wait, play the slow game. It would blow your mind how many of the giants you see with your eyes you can catch doing that. It's so much fun. Now, let's talk about sort of these middle categories, okay? First up is going to be the double dipped tubes. We're just working our way across. The double dip tubes, you know what? We're going to start with the tournament tubes, actually. Tournament tubes first. The tournament tube is going to be what we'd call a single dip tube, and 2 tubes in that category. From Gets It, we've got their 3.5-inch tube. And then From Dry Creek, we've got that 3.5-inch creek tube. That tournament tube, either one of these, I grew up on this tube. Many of you know this, some of you don't. When I grew up, we had 2 baits that we threw, and the main one was this. I went quite a few years before we started throwing a 4.5-inch little worm or a 4-inch straight tail worm. My childhood, we threw 1 bait, and it was a Gets It. That is what we fished with. We caught a lot of fish too. So let me pull one out here. Pull each of these out. So the purple one, that's a Gets It. Old Ugly over here. That's really what it's called. That's Old Ugly. That is a good color. That's your Dry Creek. You can see they're very thin. I mean, look how much thinner they are even than that tiny little tube, right? That thin profile, that's what we call a tournament tube. If you are a typical Highland Reservoir guy, well, let's scrap that. Lowlands too. I mean, these are what I was throwing at Clear Lake. Tournament tubes. You get a Dry Creek, green pumpkin, black flake. You get a Gets It, green pumpkin. When the going gets tough, difficult fish crush a tournament tube. They do. They just do. I'm telling you. The tournament tube, if I could only have one head size to put in it, this is the style that we'll use right here. This is just a standard X-Zone 60-degree tube head. See how thin that weight is on there? It just fits perfectly inside that tube. And again, you can goop them up so that they go in easier, because I'm gonna have to sort of force it here, but there she is. That's a tournament tube. Nothing to it, right? But a 3/16 ounce does a great spiral. Now, Tim prefers a quarter. You know, everybody's a little different. I prefer that lighter head, a little bit slower fishing. Tim uses a quarter from shallow water to deep. And I'm talking 5 foot to 80 foot. Because there are a lot of times we're in Highland reservoirs, we'll tube fish deep. But the beauty of that tube is everything from pulling up on a rocky point and firing it out there, letting it go to bottom and just slow pulling it. You're doing the same thing you'd be doing with a jig, a worm, a Ned rig, a creature bait, but it's just a different profile. It's totally different than what they're used to. They eat it. I don't know how else to explain this to you. If you need a panic button bait, there it is. It's that simple. They just plow these things. But the beauty of it is that you can also pull up on docks. If you're on a dock fishery, be that a floating bathroom out in the middle of a cove somewhere, floating campsites on the West Coast, or just deep docks on a Highland reservoir, fish will sit up in those shade lines in the summertime, and the tube, 3/16 ounce on the death spiral, it's the same game that we play in the Great Lakes. It's just not the clear water. Let it fall, 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 hits bottom and just get tight on it. Nothing. Now, I don't wait as long in the murky water. A few seconds, give it the shake. A few more seconds, give it another one. A few more seconds, pop it. And then just drag it out a couple times and then repeat. The clearer the water, the longer you wait while doing nothing. The murkier the water, the more you add motion to get those bites. But a tournament tube, the confidence is that high. You can go either way. A Dry Creek, a Gets It. Between Tim and I, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of bass have fallen to both of these. You add my dad and brother into the mix, we're talking tens of thousands. I mean, it's ridiculous the number of fish that tournament tubes have boated for us. Now, from there, you step up to what we'll call the double dipped tubes. This is where I spend a lot of my tube fishing where I live. I live on the Tennessee River, okay? This is that like full-size double dipped tube. They're fatter bodied. See the difference? It's more of a full meal, if you will. It's a better replacement for a jig or a creature bait because it's a full-size profile. we fish these a lot. Be that there are highland reservoirs in the mountains in the south, right? The Appalachian region, a lot of highland reservoirs, a lot of lowland reservoirs too. The Tennessee River itself, a lot of these types of places, your Texas lakes, those lowland reservoirs, those are places where the double dip tube is king over a tournament tube or a single dip tube. You can throw that same exact thin head, or you can power up. So these are goby heads. And what is a goby head? A goby head is a fat head. Now, of course, you can throw these on the Great Lakes as well, these full-size tubes, of course. But I just find that by this time of year, the downsized gets me the biggest bites. And that's why that's what I throw. But other times of year, a double dip tube with a goby head in it is amazing. So what a goby head will do, let's just pull out a tube here. What do we got? Let's grab a big bite. So the first one up from Big Bite Baits, this is the tour tube. And this is a tube that Tim and I have thrown for many, many years. Big full-size tube. When you stick a goby head in it, it's all weight forward. You see that? So weight forward eliminates the big spiral. It's that thinner, longer weight that gives us the death spiral. That fat goby head gives us a fat head in the tube, which gives us a goby-like profile. Gobies have that big flat head on them. So it gives us that profile. It also gives us a much faster fall to bottom. And it might spiral a little on its way down, but for the most part, we're heading straight to bottom with a goby head. And you could throw those in 3/8 to 3/4. I mean, heavy tubes. Now, I talked in the beginning about how so much of our tube fishing is about finding those ways to trigger that feed response, the death spiral being one of those. Another one is the ability to crack the tube. Cracking a tube is very similar to stroking a jig. So cracking a tube is letting that tube get down and then pop, pop, snapping it, shooting this thing up off the bottom, and then letting it fall back down. The tube has this amazing glide to it. So when you crack a tube, it doesn't just shoot in a straight line. It'll dart and then come down. It is a bite triggering motion. And every time we do that, we do it with double dip tubes. This style of tube, that's that, again, that big bite. So much confidence in that one. We've got one other one in the same category, and this is the larger X-Zone. So we just talked about the little Stealth Finesse series. That's the tiny guy. This is their standard tube. It's just their X tube, the 3.75. Here's that size difference, almost identical, right? The biggest difference is that in the Big Bite Tour tube, we have more body, shorter legs. In the X-Zone, we have shorter body, longer legs. That gives you options. So if you start out with longer legs, you can trim them shorter if you want to, right? So minor difference, otherwise very similar tubes. The Big Bite is a little softer than the X-Zone. The other thing is a lot of the X-Zones come with a completely different colored tail in them. So you've got a lot of color options. But all of these double dip tubes, you can go to a heavier head, to a goby style head, and you can crack those tubes in addition to like slow pulling on the bottom or shaking. And then that brings us to the last category, which is your flipping tubes. Big Bite Tour Flipper is my favorite one. And I stuff, there's like 2 packs in this bag. I mean, I stuff them because I take these every time I travel south. That is a big old tube. Look how many tails are in that thing. It's just a giant, ugly mess. We spend so much time flipping, right? Big tungsten, going to town. Everybody is throwing some sort of a beaver type profile, right? We're throwing a D-bomb, we're throwing a sweet beaver, we're throwing a craw profile. Everyone's doing it, everybody. So if you're on a fishery where there's a lot of flipping going on, these fish are seeing thousands of the same bait over the course of a year. almost no one is coming through there flipping a tube. These big profile tubes fish extremely well. They slip in and out of cover beautifully because they have nothing to grab. You fish the exact same rig. I mean, tungsten to a wide gap hook or a flipping hook, you just go to flipping. But when that thing hits bottom, it's just a different profile than every other bait that lands down there with them. And I'm telling you, on the good days, who cares? They're eating all of it, right? But on the bad days, it's different. And I've had some days when we've been down in Florida in particular, where we've messed them up flipping with a tube instead of flipping with a creature. There's just a time and a place for it, and it is often overlooked. I mean, we're talking from Florida flipping to Great Lakes crystal clear water smallmouth and everywhere in between. A tube is a very unique bait. Now let's talk about the rods, because the rod is a critical part of tube fishing. Much more important than you would expect. This is my main tube rod, and it is nothing new, although I did update to the latest version of the Twin Power because it's so insanely smooth. But this is St. Croix Legend Elite 7/6 medium. Legend Elite means I get the full cork. So when I'm fishing the tube up north, I'm not like just fishing, right? I'm hunting. My eyeballs are scanning the water. I'm making these casts at big ones, and I know that there's big ones looking at my tube. So I'm standing at the ready all the time, rod locked in, waiting to set the hook. Full cork just makes that more comfortable. That's why I do so much of that. But the 7'6" thing, I would say all my tube rods are like 7'4" to 7'6". That's where I've locked in, regardless of budget. The 7'6" helps me get the distance when I'm leading fish in clear water, but in reverse, it also helps me pick all that line up to set the hook. That's really important. It's hard to pick up that much line and get a powerful hook set across distance. So 7'6" has become key to me. The Twin Power, this is the Shimano Twin Power. This is a high-end reel. Let me show you this thing. This thing is a Cadillac, an absolute Cadillac. The Twin Power is in the same family as the Shimano Stella, Shimano's highest end reel, okay? They're in the same family. It's one step down from Stella. As somebody who fishes a lot of high-end gear, I'm gonna tell you, and I've said this before for many years, if you want to experience the highest end feel, Stella is incredible, but Twin Power at drastically lower pricing. Now, it is still a very high-end reel, but compared to Stella, very affordable. If you want to experience the Shimano feel like nothing else, the Twin Power, whoa, it's blowing hard all of a sudden. The Twin Power is unbelievable. It's all the technologies of Stella trickling down. All those technologies. It's like, if it's a 0 to 100 scale and a Stella is 100, a Twin Power is a 95. Like, that's all you're giving up, and it's a huge cost savings. You can almost buy 2 Twin Powers for a Stella. If you want to experience that refined, ultra high-end feel, insanely smooth, endless power, you can do it at Twin Power without spending Stella money. Bang for the buck to experience the top of the line. Twin Power will save you a fortune, and you will get that experience. So that is what I fish on my Legend Elite. It is an incredible, incredible setup for the money. Absolutely unbelievable. If you tube fish daily, I don't think it gets better. I mean, I haven't made an adjustment other than putting a new Twin Power on it when they got updated. I have not made an adjustment in many, many years. Couple more options for you. Another one that I've really enjoyed the last year is this one, Fenwick World Class. This is their 7.4 medium heavy. So when I want to crack a tube, double dip tubes, full size tubes, 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce, you need more rod. You've got to put it to them. 7.4, a little bit shorter, means that I get to that backbone a little bit faster, and we're powered up to the medium heavy. I can just hit them that much harder. That has made a big difference. Got that paired up to the Zenon 2500, and I have really enjoyed this combo. All of these tube rods have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 to 15 pound braid on them, and then I tie long leaders. And then this is a good one. This is mid-price, it's not budget. This is not like some bare bones budget rod. It's still a pricey combo for the average guy, but we have found an affordable way, a mid-priced combo that is amazing for throwing all this same stuff. I had been looking through rods for a long time, trying to, because I mean, we're talking about spending a lot of money over here, and not everybody throws a tube every day. Not everybody is fishing for the biggest smallmouth of their life every time they do it, and they don't care what it costs to make sure they land that fish. Not everyone's in that category. A lot of people just want the right action at the lowest possible price. This is the best I've found. In the Shimano Zodius line, 2 years ago, they added a 7.6 medium, and I've been very happy with that rod. Paired up to a Vanford, which is a killer reel for the price. 10 pound Suffix 832, and then your light fluorocarbon leader. And I'm using, this is Gold Label, Seaguar Gold Label. I have fallen in love with Gold Label over the last 2 seasons. That has become my primary fluorocarbon leader. Gold Label is incredibly strong, and it is also incredibly thin. So if you are using a lot of fluoro leader, if you use Gold Label, you have a choice. If you're using, you know, an 8 pound fluoro leader for whatever you're used to doing, you can go to a Gold Label 8 pound, and it will be even thinner than you're used to, and it's still incredibly strong on the straight pull. Incredibly strong. But it's so thin that if you want, you can power up to the 10. You can go up a size, and now you have a stronger line than you're used to at the same diameter. And I do both. It depends on the situation. Like if I'm trying to get super stealthy, Gold Label, I can go just thin, 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 and I don't lose those fish. But if I'm in a situation where, like today, my water clarity is like 3 foot, and if I've got a technique where I would be using 10 pound, I'm like, forget that, let's go to Gold Label 12. It's the exact same thing, diameter wise, exact same thing, but it's that much stronger, and now I can crack them and wrench those fish and not worry about it. I've just been so impressed by that leader. Just a random little side note, but guys, I can't emphasize enough for you the power of the tube. Again, from Clearwater smallmouth, getting the most leery of fish to make a mistake and trip up, to cracking a tube for largemouth to get a fish that would follow a creature bait but never eat it. You can't get these actions with other baits. You try to crack a creature bait, the claws drag in the water, the action's not there. You crack a tube on the fall has got motion. It's got a glide, or it's got a death spiral, depending on how heavy your head is. When it hits bottom, the tails spread out, they undulate, they flow in the water. But when you crack it, everything just streamlines, nothing is in the way, and the thing will just rock it. So the action is unlike all the other baits. And then all the way over to a flipping tube where you're just presenting a completely different profile than they see on a daily basis. The tube is special. It should be in your lineup. Don't overlook it. It is so much fun. Going north every year to throw a tube is one of my highlights of my personal fishing. I like it that much. I'll link everything in the video description for you. From the Great Lakes sand, the hands down best color that I have ever found for that Great Lakes fishing. Like, I'm telling you, that's the color. If you are wondering, this year, should I try another color of smallmouth tube? Yeah, it's that tube, that color. To the ability to take a unique profile and make it weedless and not deal with the #1 headache of tube fishing, which is getting snagged up, to finding out that a goby head can crack that tube for you. Let it fall. Let it fall. It's a fun way to fish. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.